Hello and welcome to the Female Rockers Masterclass. My name is Ash and today we're going to be talking about bending notes on your guitar. So let's jump right into it. First off, let's talk about the hand positioning for bending notes. A very important thing about bending is to make sure that your thumb will be anchored over your fretboard whenever you go to bend. So let's say we're going to bend our 7th fret on our B string. When we go to bend it, make sure that your thumb is anchored over your fretboard. This will allow much more control and strength for bending that note. Also, you're going to want to make sure, like I said, we're on the 7th fret, but for more strength and control, you're going to want to put your 2nd and your 1st finger behind the note you're bending. So this is the note you're bending, that we're going to bend in a second rather, and you're going to put those fingers behind it on those frets. But we're only hearing this sound. These are just for support. So let's go ahead and try to do a whole step bend. But first, let me explain what a whole step bend is. A whole step bend, like I said, we're on the 7th fret, will be 2 frets away. So we're bending this note to make it sound like this note. So our 7th fret will be bending to make it sound like our 9th fret. So demonstrated will look like this. Notice how my thumb is over the fretboard. That gives me much more control. The way we don't want to bend is like this. That's not a good bend. This allows for much more control. And it allows the motion to come more from our wrist rather than just our fingers. And it gives us that nice angle. So again, let's do a whole step bend. So it'll be the 7th fret, and we're going to make it sound like our 9th fret of the B string. And you can double check you hit the right note by bending, and then hitting the note that you were trying to bend to. So that was a success. So now we're going to bend a half step. So that was our whole step. Now we're going to bend a half step. So a half step away is just from one fret to the next. So we're going to be bending our 7th fret to make it sound like our 8th fret. So this won't be as big of a bend, so keep that in mind when you're going to bend your note. Again, make sure your thumb is anchored over that fretboard. So there's the note we want. We did it. Awesome. So let's go ahead and move this up to our 9th fret and try to bend a new set of notes. So let's start off with a half step bend. So we're going to be bending our 9th fret and we want it to sound like our 10th fret. That's a success. Go ahead and double check it. Now let's do a whole step bend. So that'll be 2 frets away from our 9th fret. We're going to make it sound like our 11th fret. So that's a bigger bend and that may be harder. Awesome. So now you know the differences between a half step and a whole step bend. Also, whenever you are trying to bend, if you have any discomfort, to go ahead and give yourself a break and make sure you're using the right technique to bend so you don't injure yourself. And this will get easier as you continue to build calluses on your fingers and strengthen your hand overall as a guitarist. So let's just recap what we have learned before we go ahead and say goodbye. So let's bend on our 7th fret. We're going to do a whole step bend, which like how I mentioned, is 2 frets away. So our 9th fret. Our 7th fret needs to sound like our 9th fret when we bend it. Again, make sure your thumb is anchored over the fretboard. So that's our whole step bend. Now let's do a half step bend. So our 7th fret needs to sound like our 8th fret. Thumb anchored, and that's a shorter bend. You need to make sure you listen really closely to make sure your bends are in tune when you're bending. And like I've said earlier in the lesson, you can go ahead and double check your bends. That's a whole step Make sure you got it to pitch. Half step bend. Make sure you got it to pitch. That'll be good ear training as well whenever you're learning how to bend. All right, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Again, my name is Ash, and if you liked this content, be sure to go ahead and subscribe to the Female Rockers page for more lessons. Thank you.